So, welcome to Reliably Republican. Today's guest is Joe Powers and Sue Cienki. They are from Rhode Island. Joe is the chair, and Sue is the national committeewoman. And we just have a great show lined up. We're going to talk about the strides that they have made in Rhode Island to get more Republicans elected and how to grow their party, and just in general, how hard they work. As a Republican Party in Rhode Island. So you don't want to miss this one. It's truly a joy to have these two special guests with me today. Hi, I'm Casey Crosbie. Welcome to Reliably Republican. Today, I'm very honored to have two special guests from the state of Rhode Island. My good friend, Joe Powers, who was recently elected state chairman, and my other good friend, Sue Cienki, who was the former state chairman, who is now the national committeewoman. Welcome, guys.
Hi, Casey. Thank you. Thanks for having us.
Hey, Casey. Thanks for having us.
So first and foremost, how's the weather up there? Is it a little chilly or...
We're expecting snow this weekend, so we're getting ready for winter.
There you go. It's a sunny 58 degrees in Kentucky today. So sorry about that, but it's a beautiful day here. And I'm glad to have you with me today. And, I always start off asking people that I have on the show, this is an inside look at Republican politics. We've been highlighting different states. And I know both of you have very unique backgrounds, but how'd you get involved in Republican politics and in your roles within the Republican Party of Rhode Island?
Well, I've been a longtime Republican. I grew up in New York. Subsequent to that, moved to Maryland, and then found myself in Rhode Island, the smallest state in the Union. I first initially got involved when I was at the bus stop, and a bunch of mothers had said to me, you are so interested in education. Why don't you run for school committee? So that's how I started in politics. I ran for school committee, became the chair. After that, I ran on my town council, became the president of the town council. And when I was rolling off that, I was approached by a group of people who the former Rhode Island Republican Party chair was rolling off, and they asked me to run for party chair. So I ran for party chair, and after 4 years, I tapped Joe to run and ran for national committeewoman. And I've been doing that for 2 years now.
Wonderful. Joe, how about you? I guess we know you were tapped. Sue picked you and you said, I have to do it, right?
Yeah. So in New England, the terminology tapped means there's something wrong with your head. It's really what it stands for. But in actuality, what really happened is I was walking down the street and this lady pulled up in a windowless van, offered me a glass of bourbon, and I jumped in and she kidnapped me. And suddenly I'm sitting there talking to you guys. No, I like to tell people that I was an armchair politician. I have been not active in the Republican Party, but I have been a Republican since the 90s, since being in the military. Have always voted Republican, always thought that way. I was working with one of my clients who probably 2022 or so had told me she was running for office. I thought it was cool. And I said, let's talk sometime. And she was kind of playing me up about running for office, and she kept mentioning it to me, and I laugh at her. Well, one day she called me and she said, you live in district such and such. I said, yep. She says, you're running for Senate. I said, why do you say I'm running for Senate? She said, because your senator is doing this and blah, blah, blah. And it kind of got to me. She hit me at the right spot. I was like, I got infuriated. She then set me up to go talk with former chairman, Sue Cienki. So I went in to talk with her. Despite even that, I still decided to run for office. And I almost won. I actually came pretty close, comparatively speaking, to a guy who's been in office for 28 years. And then I kind of rolled back into my real world and from afar kind of watched what was happening and started going to a couple more meetings. And then Sue came up and said, hey, I'm not running. I'm going for national committeewoman. Would you like to run for chair? And I told her no. That's when she got the van and got some bourbon and made an offer I couldn't refuse. So then I decided to run and I won. And I'm still waiting. You mentioned earlier the idea of what we do inside of this world. And people think it's a country club and they think it's this. I'm still waiting for that to happen because I hit the ground running. And despite what you see in front of you, I haven't stopped running ever since. But it's been an amazing ride.
Well, I can tell you, just being from Kentucky, I have taught Sue very well about bourbon, so she knows all there is. And I've told her too, it's a great thing to use to bribe people. So sure. See, we trained her well. obviously Rhode Island is, a blue state. I would consider you all probably a little on the blue side. And Joe, you mentioned you ran for Senate and you came pretty close. I mean, can you talk about that a little bit, like what it's like for your candidates running, and maybe also the perspective of recruiting, because that's difficult. Kentucky was there not too long ago. When you're trying to talk to people about running for office, knowing, what's ahead of them. I mean, how do you encourage people to run, and kind of what's the experience you get from the candidates, knowing that you're historically leaning more blue?
Yeah, so Sue could give you a lot longer laundry list of pains and woes of having those conversations, but I will tell you from my side of the world, being in business, I've been in real estate as far as investing for a very long time, and there's two things that I wanted to pull out of my business world to come into the politics. One was to make what we do interesting and inviting to people who want to invest to do the time, and the second part is going to be selling. That is really our job, is to sell what it is we do in here in Rhode Island. And I'll tell you, it's one of the hardest sales that I've ever been experienced in my life. And I've been doing sales for almost 30 years now. Part of that has to do with the fact that in Rhode Island, people have just reserved themselves to two very bad ideologies. One being is, if you're a Republican, you're never going to win in the state of Rhode Island. And number two is that's just the way politics are in Rhode Island. So we just live with it the way that we live with it. So the conversations we have right now is about the party itself, not about the offices themselves. We want to show them that there's a huge upside to being part of the Republican Party of the state of Rhode Island. I have a moniker that I use that it simply says is that it just makes sense to be a Republican in Rhode Island, because ultimately it does, because we have turned into the party of the working class. We are the opposition across the board in the super minority for 80 years now, Sue?
Mm-hmm.
And so it's
Close
getting
to
people
90.
close to 90 now. So I must have blinked. So it's the idea of trying to get people to understand what the party's all about and how we are actually going to come out louder and prouder and speak the language that we want to speak. And we're going to get the message out to get more people to come our way. And I will tell you, 2024 was a huge help. Donald Trump took an additional 13.9% of the votes in the state of Rhode Island, and a lot more people are waking up to us. And now it's just our time to ride that.
Right. And I get excited about you all too, because one thing I see with your group, and I know there's been turnover. Joe, you're fairly new. I know your committee man's new, but one thing that I recognize with you all, and Sue, I'd like for you to comment about maybe the importance. You guys are a very cohesive team. You work together. I hear all the time. From one or the other, that you just talk to each other. And I know that we have seen that in Kentucky, how important it is to have everybody sort of wheeling in the same direction. Can you talk a little bit about the team aspect that you all have together, and how that impacts sort of what you're doing in the state, and what people see, when they are thinking about possibly getting involved with the Republican Party?
Yeah, I think we have a great team. And I was fortunate enough to be very good friends with the former chair before me, Brandon Bell. And I have him on speed dial during my whole chairmanship. I would call him, ask him questions. The previous National Committeewoman, Ian Stenek and Steve Frias, we worked really well together as a team. And the same thing is happening now. Joe and I talk probably every day. And our new National Committee man, Tom, he is now on speed dial. So we have a great communication system here in Rhode Island. It wouldn't work if we were fighting against each other. We have one voice, and I think that that's really important. Joe is definitely the party chair. We are following his lead when it comes to how he wants to do business. And the previous 8 years prior to Joe taking chairmanship, it was run by lawyers. I'm an attorney, so I have one approach, litigation and fighting and advocating. And Joe is the perfect salesperson. So he was the perfect person to take the mantle after me, because after we set the groundwork and infrastructure, it's really about selling who the party is. And I think he's done a masterful job. And that resulted in some great wins in our legislature this cycle in historically Democratic districts. And not surprisingly, up in Central Falls, which is a predominantly Latino community, we actually had huge gains for President Trump in that area. So it just goes to show when you work together, you work collaboratively, you communicate on a daily basis, it pays off in the end.
So, you both mentioned some of the huge wins, and that's so exciting to hear for a state like Rhode Island. And obviously, having President Trump at the top of the ticket has been amazing. And one thing I noticed that we were getting constantly from the RNC was resources to help our state during this election cycle. I thought it was pretty amazing. Whether, we had some states, our swing states, obviously, where a lot of money had to go to, and there was a lot of, election integrity efforts being done. But even, can you all comment about some of the like Trump 47 activities and the list that you were getting of people, in the past, we may not have gotten the information from a campaign to help us reach out to volunteers. Can you all comment about maybe how that's been helpful, or do you foresee being able to use those lists to help you grow the party, down the road?
Oh, I can throw something in there about that. One in particular is one thing that I wanted to make sure that we all knew, and Sue and I are in total agreement regarding this, is that we all knew our role here in Rhode Island. We legitimately have 4 electoral votes, and we know that although it's going to change in the future, wink, wink, nudge, nudge, we knew that the 7 states were going to be the most important ones, but we wanted to make sure that we played a role, that we helped out across the country where we could. We did have people from the state who went to other states to do door knocking. We did volunteer. I only volunteered for a certain number of postcards to handwrite, but Sue felt that I was undershooting, so she doubled up on us. The Trump 47 was a big one, and I'll tell you why. The one thing that will get people to want to be part of something is to make them part of something. And when people had an opportunity to tag themselves as a Trump 47 captain, it made them feel inclusive. It made them feel like they were doing something, and that got a lot of buy-in from people in the state here, whether they were making calls in state or out of state. It didn't matter. And there was some that were calling me up and like extremely excited, like, oh, I did this many calls today, or I got a badge for this, or I got this, or I got that. And they got very excited. So I think that was one of the smartest things. I mean, Donald Trump is the ultimate salesman. I mean, let's be honest. He's been in real estate forever and a day, and that's what he does. And getting people, whether it was his idea or not, the campaign was very smart in utilizing that. And the RNC itself has been phenomenal with communications. The Chairman Whatley himself has been on the phone with me once or twice a month. Where I was able to reach out to him, and he was able to get back to me straight away.
And that's pretty amazing considering the amount of races that have been going on and the priorities across the country. But I think also the fact where Chairman Whatley really sees, a priority in states like Rhode Island and the opportunity, like you said. I mean, who would have thought that President Trump would increase those numbers so much in just one cycle? And I know Sue was there during the previous cycle, and, it was a little different story. Sue, maybe since you're a lawyer, maybe I can just pick your brain a minute about, election integrity. I don't know if you all deal with a lot of the same problems. Every state is different. And that's what I think people really struggle with understanding too, like, why doesn't this state do this? Or we have people in Kentucky who will, stand up and scream and shout and say, we've got problems. And I'm like, y'all, we ain't got nothing compared to what we're seeing in California, right now, where they were still counting votes 20 days later, or, some of these other states. Can you comment a little bit just from, do you see any of those issues in Rhode Island, or do you feel like you guys do a pretty good job? Or maybe you just want to comment in general about what you've seen the RNC do.
Yeah, I would say I'm really proud of the RNC for their election integrity efforts. I think that's really important. In 2020, our legislature and our then Secretary of State took it upon herself to change the election law by consent decree. The RNC really came in and helped us. We went all the way to the Supreme Court to try to fight that. And lo and behold, we were found as a party not to have standing. And we needed an officer of the state to join the lawsuit with us. Well, they were all Democrats, and they all very happy with what they did with the consent decree. And basically what happened in Rhode Island is the election law was then subsequently changed the next election cycle, remove any verification of signatures on mail ballots, a witness requirement or a notarization requirement. And we allow ballot harvesting. We allow ballot harvesting any number that you can ballot harvest. And we object to that as a party. We don't believe that anybody involved in any specific campaign from any party should be involved in harvesting ballots. So third-party ballot harvesting. We think that family members or a caregiver can certainly go harvest ballots and bring in somebody's ballot, but limit it to less than 5. There's no reason why you should bring in hundreds of mail ballots. So that's one of our major objections. And the signature verification process that they go through for the mail ballots now is so subjective. And we object to that. We at one time allowed an X. Now you have to have a signature, and they say that they match it. But I have watched the process from start to finish, and it's very subjective. So that's something that we continue to push through the legislature by testifying and pushing our Republicans to try to scale back those things. But overall, the process here is very open, very transparent, and we have made a point to make sure that we have poll watchers and poll workers and nursing home supervisors so that we have eyes on the ground. And boy, does it make a difference, because when they know that we're there and that we're watching, the nonsense almost automatically stops.
Yeah, I would say from even a national perspective, I think, the all eyes are on you this time. We're aware of what you're doing. I think that we saw that across the country where it was hard to cheat, and so I agree with your sentiments there. Joe, as a new chair, I'm going to ask you this. What would you say is your biggest obstacle, or maybe the one thing that you weren't expecting when you took over the job? I can say, I think our chairs spend a lot of time, and people have no idea how much time it takes to run a state party. I hope I didn't steal that's what you're going to say, but can you just comment a little bit maybe about the obstacles and the amount of time you have to spend in, like you said, the smallest state? Explain to our audience just a little bit about the time commitment.
Yeah, quite honestly, it's a great question. Quite honestly, I don't think you can say it enough. So you're not stealing any thunder when people don't realize the exact amount of time that you put into this thing. It's kind of like when you get married and people say, congratulations and good luck. That's pretty much what happened when I won the seat. And I should have realized it was the night that I got elected when Sue hit the gavel and said that I had won, and then literally handed the gavel to me and she was gone. Like the ghost, she just disappeared. And I literally took over for the rest of the meeting, not knowing what to do. So I will tell you, it's I'm in business, right? And I've helped thousands of people across the country start their businesses. And the one thing that I always focus on is foundations. The name of my company, my investment company, is Foundation Investments. And I always, when I start working with people and start helping them build their business, I teach them how to create the fundamental things, the things that need to help them build their business, build your peers, build your spears, build your frame, and then you build up from there and you continue to go. That's where I wanted to start. I will tell you what my biggest surprise was. And I shouldn't be surprised. I should have kind of expected it, but I didn't. I kind of went in there, double rainbows and lollipops, expecting the greatest, because, again, that's what Sue told me this was all about, is the idea that when you're building something up, I had no idea that people will come behind you to try to chop it down. And I'm not even talking about the opposition party. I'm talking about from inside. And I realized I was moving too quickly in one direction and try to drag people. And I should know better in leadership. You don't pull people, you persuade. And I needed to go back and reset myself, which is why the relationship with Sue has been absolutely phenomenal. Along with Steve Frias, our formal national commitment, and now that Tom's there, he fits the role perfectly. Is, if I'm not mistaken, I did say to Sue, in all seriousness, I said, I will run for the seat provided you don't go anywhere. And she said, I have no intention. I said, that's good, because one lesson that I learned a long time ago is don't pretend to be the smartest person in the room. Always be willing to ask questions, because the good Lord gave us 2 of these and only 1 of these. You can only close 1 at a time. So ask the questions, then shut up and listen to the answers. So that was the biggest surprise, is that I just assumed that Republicans thought a particular way and they were just going to row in the same direction. And unfortunately, that wasn't the case. So having to go back and reset. And I think this next go around as chair, if I do finally decide to stay on and do this thing, that's where my focus is going to be. It's going to be more on selling people, not selling the process or selling the foundation. It's going to be, let's get everybody on board. Let's get everybody ready to rock and roll and get people to actually want to be part of something moving forward. So I hope that answered your question.
You did. And it's funny you should say that. And Sue, maybe you can comment because you were a chair and now you're the national committee woman. That has been a theme that I have heard talking to people across the country is that, sometimes they're a little surprised. Like we're all supposed to be moving the ball in the same direction, right? You can't score a touchdown if somebody's going in a different direction. And that some of the daggers that have come internally, do you all find it's just in Rhode Island, it's either Joe was moving too fast and implementing too many changes, or do you have different factions of the party? I mean, what are you dealing with sort of, or is it maybe a combination of everything?
Yeah, I think it's a combination of everything. Whether Joe is the new chair and has to put his own imprint on things that he wants to accomplish. When I came in, I just said the party, it's not going to change. We're not going to change the state from blue to red overnight. It was, I believed, more than a 12-year process of trying to move things in the right direction, putting the right infrastructure in place. And we're at year 6, and we're already starting to see that we're winning, moving things in the right direction. But if we got everybody to think the same way, I like in Rhode Island too, we have a statue at the top of our state house called the Independent Man. And there's a lot of independent thinking people in the Rhode Island Republican Party. So it's just trying to get everybody rowing in the same direction and not, as Joe said the other night, poking holes in our rowboat. That doesn't help. We all need to be moving in the same direction to get people elected to the state house.
Well, and I think we all just saw that with the election we just went through. President Trump was absolutely amazing. I mean, we saw RFK, Elon Musk. I remember looking at a picture somebody posted on X and it said all these people were former Democrats. Tulsi Gabbard, they were all involved in the campaign, and just seeing how he really expanded the tent of the Republican Party and people felt welcome. And, I think that helps in places where there is some people who want to shoot daggers inside to say, hey, we're big enough for everybody. And that was a perfect example of what we just went through with that last election. I mean, even different factions within the Republican Party, people who had not really engaged with us for a while, outside organizations, they were all involved, moving the same direction. So, I think that's a great point, Sue. And I think if 2024 proved anything, it was that we're a big tent party and people are welcome to join us. And you don't have to be like me to be a part of the Republican Party, right?
Right. And I think up here, we run into a lot of what we call Kennedy-esque Democrats. They believe in the JFK Democratic model. They're union members, they're blue-collar workers. But what we've seen is the progressive left has taken over the Democratic Party, even in this state. And the progressives are getting louder and louder. And I think that opens a huge opportunity for the Rhode Island Republican Party to say, come over to us, because we really are talking about the cost of living, how much it costs to live here. In terms of even energy policy, we are the second highest state for our utility prices, only behind Hawaii. It makes no sense whatsoever what we're doing here. We've got infrastructure problems, and we're a tiny, tiny state. And I think if the rest of the country looks at how things are run here, they're going to run away and say, we don't want to do things the way that the Democrats have controlled Rhode Island. If you want to be able to live, work, and thrive here, things have got to change. So we're seeing some of those Kennedy-esque Democrats actually jump on board with us. And I say, if you agree with us 80% of the time, that's great. Let's get some legislative wins. Let's take back the governorship in 2026 and start taking some statewide office. And I think we can do that in 2026 under Joe's leadership.
Well, and I was just going to say, Joe, since it sounds like the left in your state is going very far left, and, and you hear people all the time saying, I didn't leave my party, they left me. Most people are not identifying with just the craziness going on right now with the far left. And sounds like you have your fair share there. If people want to be involved in the Rhode Island Republican Party, where do they go? How do you encourage them to find you all?
Well, I wouldn't tell them to call Sue because she'd probably kidnap him in a windowless van and keep him hostage for a
But she'd
minimum
give them
of 2
bourbon,
years.
right?
They better not, because she told me there wasn't any more. What I tell people all the time is I have 2 phone numbers. I have 2 email addresses. We've got our website. We've got our headquarters. And I tell people all the time, if you want to volunteer, you want to get part of what we're doing, you can always visit our website. It's very simply, it's just ri.gop is the website. My email is chair@ri.gop. Sue's email is ncw@ri.gop, although she won't check it. I'm just letting you guys know. And we're here to speak truth. The idea behind it, though, is just for numbers' sake. I'll tell you, just to jump on real quick, if I could, about what Sue was just saying, is in our state we have roughly 785,000 registered voters. Of those, only 14% of them are registered Republicans, 45% are Democrats. At least 47% actually are unaffiliated. So the progressive left that's actually coming in is attacking the Democrats that are there, because the majority of the Democrats try to sell the one hemisphere of Rhode Island that is all Trump land as conservative Democrats, the old school JFK Democrats. And they say, we're very conservative and probably more Republican than most Republicans. Well, those progressives are attacking those people and actually saying, look, these people are way too conservative for us. We need to make real change in the state of Rhode Island. Ironically, the state has been run for almost 90 years under Democratic rule, and we're in the hole we're in because of the Democratic choices, and they want to take it even further to the left to try to make things work in a certain way, and it's just not going to happen. So my suggestion to everyone is reach out to me as much as you want. You can email me, visit the website, you can call me. I want to hear from people. Is one thing I'm not afraid of is having a conversation with somebody. But more importantly, part of the conversation is listening to what they have to say, not me telling them what I want to tell them.
Wonderful. Well, go ahead, Sue. Were you going to add to that?
I was just going to say, Joe is incredibly responsive when people. Please take advantage of that. And he's absolutely right. The progressives have really totally taken on the Democratic Party. So we're starting to see fractures, and there's an opportunity for us to pick up seats and welcome those moderate Democrats to our side and say, come run with us. We've got great policy and ideas. It's not just run away from the Democratic Party. Towards us, because we have really good ideas to get things done, and we're being stopped by the Democrats in control.
Well, and I think you bring up just a great point too about the opportunity, that the left is attacking people, and it's just prime right now. And again, we saw in Kentucky, we were a blue state too, and we came up. We thought it would take 12 years, but we got really lucky in 2016 with President Trump at the top of the ticket to be able to take over our House. We got super majorities, and things moved pretty quickly from there. But we have a prime opportunity right now with this president and with what we've seen from the left. And so, I'm excited to hear that you guys have a great plan put together to try to swing your state and that you're making great strides. And, before we conclude, I always like to ask too, if you guys have Twitter. This is easy. He's like, oh no, I won't ask people to email you because I know you're not going to look at it. But if you guys have any social media feeds that you want to, I got to bust on her a little bit, Joe, right? But if you guys have any social media that you would like to share where people can find you, I know both of you are active on X. So if you want to give us your handles, or if they can find you on Instagram, Facebook, whatever, just feel free to shout them out and we'll make sure we link them too.
Go ahead,
Joe.
My Twitter feed is, Sue Cienki at National Committeewoman, NCW, Rhode Island.
And that's Cienki, Sue Cienki, Cienki.
That's it.
Sue Cienki.
It's spelled exactly the way it sounds.
Yeah.
Good job. So mine is just Joe Powers on X. It is RIGOP chairman. I use that on all of them. So my Twitter, my Instagram, my Facebook. My mother named me Joe for a particular reason because she likes to keep me simple. So I keep it simple across the board. RIGOP chairman on all 3 platforms, all 4 platforms. So that's where everybody can find me if they want.
Very consistent. That's good. I wish I would have learned that lesson a while back because I have to go in and figure everything out. But you all are wonderful. Thank you so much for spending your afternoon with me. I appreciate you guys. And I hope you have a good Thanksgiving and happy holidays. And I think I get to see you all next week. So looking forward to
You
it.
get to
Yes,
see
ma'am.
us. And happy birthday, Casey. Happy
Thank
birthday.
you. Yes.
Happy
Have
birthday,
a happy
Casey.
Thanksgiving.
Yeah, thank you. Yes,
Have a
thank
great
you so
Thanksgiving.
much. Thank you to Joe and Sue for joining me today. We had a great show learning more about Rhode Island GOP politics and how you can get involved. If you want, please like, share, and subscribe to this podcast. And next week, I promise we're going to have more special guests on the show. So stay tuned. Have a great day.